What would you do if your boyfriend told his mom you don't do anything around the house when you're the one actually running it? For our first writer, that was it. No more laundry, no more silence. And that was just the beginning. Because today's episode, it's pure chaos. We've got moms-in-law calling girlfriends temporary, guys hiding secret daughters, and a woman making an unthinkable decision to protect her baby from the pain her brother went through. These aren't little spats, these are full-on emotional wrecking balls. From skipping a destination wedding to refusing to raise a kid from an affair or ending things over ignored trauma, every story in today's video is intense, personal, and guaranteed to make you take a side. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, the channel where Reddit drama hits different. If you're into toxic relationships, wild family showdowns, and moral dilemmas that mess with your head, you'll feel right at home here. We're closing in on 10K subs, so if you're loving the content, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe. It seriously helps more than you know. Now grab a snack, get comfy, and let's jump into the madness. Am I the asshole for refusing to do my boyfriend's laundry after he told his mom I don't do anything around the house? So, the writer is 26, juggling full-time work and full-time life. She's got a boyfriend, 28 years old, and after 3 years together, they've now been sharing a home for one. Shared walls, shared bills, shared routines. But when it comes to actual responsibility, well, let's just say the sharing feels one-sided. While both of them clock in and out of full-time jobs, the writer carries the weight of the home on her back. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, groceries, bills, even taking care of the cat, because let's face it, pets are not low maintenance no matter how cute they are. And the boyfriend? Every now and then he'll toss out the trash or maybe rinse a dish if the stars align. That's it, that's his contribution. This didn't just go unspoken either. The writer brought it up. She tried to communicate, like adults do, but all she got in return was, "I'll try to do more." Ah yes, the classic empty promise, the "I'll try" that never actually turns into doing, and then came dinner with his parents. Now, you'd expect dinner with the in-laws to come with a little awkwardness, maybe a few uncomfortable questions, but what the writer got was next-level disrespect. Out of nowhere, mid-meal, his mom looks her dead in the eye and says, "So what do you actually do around the house?" Says you're not really the domestic type. Just wow. That kind of comment doesn't come from nowhere. That came from a conversation, a casual little chat between a mother and son, where this grown man decided to throw the person who keeps his entire life running under the bus. And what does he do when his mom calls her lazy to her face? Nothing. He just sits there, silent, embarrassed maybe, but silent. The writer tried to play it cool. She joked, "Well, if by not domestic you mean I do everything, then sure." Crickets. No laughter, just judgment and silence hanging in the air like a thick fog. On the drive home, she confronted him, and his excuse? "I just meant you don't really enjoy housework." Sir, be serious. Nobody enjoys housework. That's not the point. The point is, she does it, all of it, whether she enjoys it or not. And instead of defending her, instead of owning that, he made her the punchline. That was the last straw. So the writer didn't yell, she didn't give an ultimatum, she didn't storm out, she simply paused the laundry, no big announcement, no dramatic speech, just a quiet act of resistance. Her clothes got washed, folded, put away, his, left in the basket, piling up, gathering wrinkles, collecting dust and consequences. 1 week passed, then 2, and finally, he noticed. "Are you mad again or something? You haven't done my laundry." And the writer? She served him the coldest, most satisfying line possible. "I thought you said I don't do anything around the house, so I figured I'd live up to the label." You could almost hear the silence in that room, but instead of getting the point, he doubled down, called her petty, immature, and his mom? She even had the audacity to text the writer, telling her to let it go already. Oh no. See, when someone treats you like your efforts are invisible and then has the nerve to ask you to keep doing more, that's not love. That's entitlement. That's weaponized expectations. And the writer? She didn't fold. She told the mom straight up, "I'd be happy to let it go," right into the washing machine with the rest of his responsibilities. dropped. So now the writer turns to Reddit asking, am I the asshole? Let's be clear. No, she's not the asshole. She's the one who's been holding the whole household together while being dismissed, minimized, and made into the butt of a joke. She didn't explode. She didn't punish. She simply stopped doing unpaid labor for someone who doesn't value it, or her. And that's not petty. That's boundaries. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop showing up for someone who refuses to show up for you. Am I the asshole for doing nothing for the child my ex-wife had from her affair even now that I have primary custody of our kids? 6 years ago, the writer's life fractured. 36 years old now, but at the time, just a man trying to raise his family. He had a wife, 3 kids, and what he thought was stability. But the rug was ripped out from under him when he discovered his wife, now ex-wife, was having an affair. And not just a fleeting one, an affair that resulted in pregnancy. And let's not sugarcoat it, cheating is betrayal. But a baby, that turns betrayal into a permanent reminder. When the child was born and DNA confirmed what the writer already suspected, that the baby wasn't his, he did what many wouldn't even think to do. He didn't lash out, he didn't seek revenge. He removed himself with dignity. His name was taken off the birth certificate, replaced by the biological father's. At that time, the affair partner was still in the picture. They were a couple. Everything looked like it had found its new normal. But as we all know, some storms don't just pass, they linger. The writer and his ex shared 50-50 custody of their 3 biological children. The kids weren't oblivious. They saw, they heard, they felt, and their relationship with their mother, it never quite recovered. As for the child born from the affair, there was no relationship there, not out of cruelty, but simply because, how could there be? Still, the writer did what good fathers do. He got his kids into therapy. He had the hard conversations. He told them they didn't need to hate anyone for his sake. He gave them permission to process everything without guilt. That takes strength. And then, life happened. 3 years ago, the affair partner, the father of that child, disappeared. Gone. No trace. And suddenly, the woman who once demanded independence, who made her choices and lived by them, began to ask the writer to step in. Not for their kids, but for her 4th. She wanted him to take on a role in this child's life. She saw how involved he was with his own children and thought, why not include this one too? But here's where the line had already been drawn. And the writer? He didn't move it. Every request came through the parenting app, and every single time the writer stood firm. No. She even tried to use that refusal against him to take full custody of their kids. The court disagreed. The judge reminded her, he has no legal obligation to your other child. Then came the spiral. The ex-wife lost her house, then her job, then everything else. And as her world crumbled, her pleas turned desperate. She asked again and again. But the writer stayed grounded, responding only when necessary, calmly reminding her that her child is not his responsibility. Still, she pushed. Just do something, she said. Send a birthday gift. Include the child in some activities. Let them feel what it's like to have a father figure. She even offered to let him adopt the child. Let that sink in. The woman who broke the marriage is now asking the ex-husband to legally take on a child that never belonged to him, emotionally, biologically, or otherwise. And here's the part that cuts deep. The writer doesn't hate the child. In fact, he's painfully aware that the child is innocent in all of this. But he knows himself. He knows the weight he carries. He knows that forcing a connection with this child would only taint them with the complicated pain tied to their origin. So instead, he steps back. His kids, they don't want to connect with their half-sibling, not out of spite, but because the bond was never there. And when they're old enough, they've already said they won't go back to that house. Now his ex is angry. Not just upset, furious. Her messages have turned hostile. She accuses him of being heartless, fried, of treating her child like garbage. But he saves every message, just in case, just in case. And through it all, the writer still wonders, am I the asshole? Because at the end of this tangled mess of betrayal, broken trust, custody battles, and emotional fallout, there's a child. A child who had no say in any of it. A child who now has only one parent left. And that parent is asking, begging for something. And still the writer says no. Not out of cruelty, not out of vengeance, but because he knows that sometimes pretending to care for a child you can't emotionally connect with is far more damaging than staying away. So, is he the asshole? Well, here's the brutal truth. Not everyone can be the hero in every story, but walking away from a role that was never yours to begin with doesn't make you the villain. And sometimes, not showing up is the kindest thing you can do when your heart isn't in it. Am I the asshole for breaking up with my boyfriend after he kept asking to do anal even after I told him I was raped? The writer begins with a memory so heavy it practically crushes the air out of the room. When she was younger, someone she trusted drugged and assaulted her, a violation that left wounds not just on her body but etched deep into her spirit. And the worst part? It was the kind of trauma people don't talk about, the kind that gets buried, locked away, just so you can function, breathe, exist. Fast forward to her current relationship, a boyfriend, someone she believed would treat her with compassion. He asked if they could try anal, a question that to some might seem innocent in the context of a trusting relationship, but not here. Not after what she went through. She said no, that should have been the end of it. But he pressed further. He asked if she'd done it before, and when she said yes, his response was a punch to the gut. So you did it for someone else, but not me? Let's pause here, because this is the kind of moment that reveals everything. Instead of hearing her silence, her pain, her no, he made it about him. That comment wasn't just insensitive, it was cruel in a subtle, manipulative way. So she told him the truth, that what happened before wasn't consensual, that she didn't want to talk about it again, ever. He said he understood, promised not to bring it up, but you already know where this is going. Just days later, he brought it up again. This time it wasn't even a question, it was a pitch. I think I could make it feel good. It could help you move past it if we did it right. Let that sink in. He tried to spin her trauma into an opportunity for himself, as if healing could be engineered through sex, as if her boundaries were merely suggestions he could rewrite. The writer froze. That kind of betrayal, it doesn't shout, it stuns you into silence. She told him again clearly, "Don't bring this up again. I will never want it. I'm not going to change my mind." He apologized again. Another promise. But promises mean nothing when they come with conditions and expiration dates. Weeks later, it happened again, this time in the most vulnerable of settings, naked, exposed, just after an intimate moment that should have been about closeness, trust, love. And yet, he brought it up again. That was the final straw. The writer broke up with him, and now she's left questioning herself. Was she too harsh? Did she give up on something that could have been saved? Her ex pleaded, "We don't have to end it over this." Her friend chimed in, "He was just being naive, maybe you could have worked through it." But here's the thing, when someone tells you what hurts them, when someone draws a clear boundary rooted in trauma, you don't get to keep pushing and calling it love. Naivety isn't an excuse for repeated violations of someone's pain. Once is ignorance, twice is disrespect, 3 times is a choice. So no, writer, you are not the asshole. You gave him more chances than you needed to. You communicated clearly, vulnerably, bravely, and still he kept trying to rewrite your no into a maybe. Your trauma is not his project. Your healing is not his playground. Walking away wasn't just valid, it was powerful. You chose yourself, your safety, your peace, and that more than anything is something to be proud of. Am I the asshole for not defending my son when a random man beat him and his friends up? The writer begins with a portrait of a son that many parents dream of, a good kid. 16 years old, on the honor roll, volunteering at school events, tight-knit with grandparents, kind, respectful. Not perfect, of course, but solid, reliable. The kind of boy who gives you hope for the future. And if that were the whole story, this wouldn't be on Reddit. But as with so many tragedies, the descent didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, quiet, until it wasn't. This past school year, everything changed. New friends, loud, cocky boys from the wrestling and football teams. Popular, sure, but notorious. The kind of teens who wear recklessness like a badge of honor. And the writer's son started becoming one of them. His grades slipped. His attitude turned sour. Family dinners stopped, conversations turned into grunts, eye rolls, and slammed doors. Then came the movie theater incident. He and his friends trashed the place for laughs. Laughs! That was the first real wake-up call. The writer didn't look away. No, he took action, grounded him, cut off electronics, spoke with the other boy's parents. There was structure, discipline, calm communication. You'd think that would be enough. It wasn't. Today changed everything. The writer let his son stay home from school for a midday doctor's appointment. Simple enough. Afterward, he dropped him back off and returned to work. But instead of heading to class, his son snuck out and met up with those same boys. That decision would soon explode into something none of them could undo. The group gathered in front of a TJ Maxx, loitering, bothering customers, being loud. It was immature, sure, but still small potatoes. Until Miss Pearly came out. She's in her 70s, beloved by everyone in town. Probably the type who remembers your name and greets you with a smile every time. She asked them politely to leave. She wasn't angry, she wasn't even confrontational, just doing her job. Holding a few hangers in her hands, she asked them gently to stop causing a scene. One of the boys started filming her, mocking her, and then the writer's son joined in. He jeered, told her to relax, said she was ruining the fun. When she tried to call security on her walkie-talkie, one of the boys slapped it out of her hand. And the writer's son? He tried to yank the clothes from her grasp. She held tight. She lost her balance. She fell. She hit the ground. And they laughed. One of them sneered, "You faking now? Huh?" Trying to play victim. At that point, something cracked. A bystander stepped forward, asked, "Did you just push that old lady?" And just like cowards do, the boys lied, said she was acting. That's when the man snapped. No more talking. He punched the writer's son, then two more of them. The others scattered. The phone dropped, but the mic was still rolling. You could hear the sounds of the blows, quick and violent. When the writer arrived, the man was still there. Calm, steady. Arms crossed like a man who knew what he'd done and why. He looked the writer in the eye and said, "I sure as hell did. Are you the father of the boy who thinks bullying an old woman is funny? What kind of man are you raising?" And the writer didn't respond with fists or outrage, because deep down he wasn't angry at the man. He was ashamed, not just for what his son did, but for how far his boy had fallen. The police showed up. Since he was the only parent there, his son was arrested on the spot. The others were picked up later. They're all in jail now. And when the writer got home, the storm began. His wife exploded. "You let our son get beat and arrested like he was some criminal." Her sister jumped in. "You're a pathetic excuse for a father." Even his own mother turned on him. "You defend your child no matter what." But here's the thing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a case of mistaken identity or some overblown teen prank. It was bullying. It was cruelty. It was the moment a child crossed the line into something darker. The writer couldn't defend what he saw. He wouldn't lie to protect him. And for that, he was suddenly the villain in his own home. He sat there, the shouting around him like white noise, like static filling the room, detached, hollowed out. And then he stood up, quietly, walked out the back door, locked himself in the shed. He needed to breathe. Because this wasn't just a bad day. This was the day he had to reckon with a truth no parent ever wants to face. I don't know who my son is anymore. It's not just shame, it's grief. The grief of watching the child you raised, the one who used to hold your hand and light up your world, become someone you no longer recognize. And now the writer is asking, am I the asshole for not stepping in, for not defending him, for not lying to soften the blow? No, writer, you're not. What you did took strength, real, agonizing, quiet strength. This wasn't a failure, this was accountability. Your son made choices. He hurt someone, he laughed while doing it. And in that moment, he needed consequences more than protection. Sometimes love means shielding, and sometimes love means letting the world hit back, just so they finally understand that it can. Am I the asshole for refusing to speak to my brother's fiancée after revealing her parenting methods? There are moments in life where your instinct kicks in, and no matter how many people try to silence it, you just know something isn't right. The writer, a 29-year-old woman, found herself in one of those moments. It all started simply enough. babysitting her brother Tom's soon-to-be stepson, a little 6-year-old boy named Dylan. Just a sweet kid playing with some toys while the adults went out to dinner. Nothing unusual, until in a moment of pure childhood clumsiness, Dylan accidentally broke a glass figurine. Instant tears. Panic. But not the kind you'd expect from a kid worried about breaking something expensive. This was deeper. Fear. And then the words that changed everything. "Please don't tell my mom. She'll give me the quiet time." The writer gently asked what quiet time meant, and Dylan explained. Not a timeout on the couch, not sitting in a room with no electronics. No, Melissa, his mother, makes him kneel, facing a wall, for an hour. Longer if he dares to cry or move. And if he speaks, more time added. That wasn't discipline. That was punishment meant to break a child's spirit. But the writer stayed calm. She didn't scold, didn't freak out in front of Dylan. She simply reassured him. Accidents happen. It's okay. When her brother and Melissa got home, she pulled Tom aside and told him what Dylan had shared, hoping naively, maybe, that he'd be just as alarmed. But Tom, he brushed it off. "Dylan's dramatic," he said. "It's just a timeout. You wouldn't understand. You're not a parent." That's when the real weight settled in. The writer saw a child in distress and a man defending the person who caused it. Still, she wasn't done. She confronted Melissa directly, firmly, respectfully. She called out the so-called quiet time for what it was. Excessive, dehumanizing, something no child should quietly endure. She didn't scream, she didn't shame. She spoke out because that's what you do when you see something that doesn't sit right in your soul. And Melissa, she exploded, accused the writer of trying to ruin their relationship, twisting a child's words, meddling, overstepping. Now the family is fractured. Tom wants an apology before the wedding. His bride-to-be? Furious. The parents siding with Melissa. But the sister? She gets it. She agrees. Something about this isn't right. And now the writer is uninvited from her own brother's wedding. The message is clear. Stay quiet or stay gone. But here's the thing. What would have happened if she hadn't said anything at all? If a 6-year-old can't cry over a broken figurine without fearing an hour of silent punishment, what else is going on behind closed doors? The writer isn't claiming to be perfect. She's not a parent, but she knows what cruelty looks like dressed up as discipline. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of perspective this family desperately needed. Now she's wondering, am I the asshole for refusing to let this go? For refusing to apologize? Well, let's be honest here. There's a difference between overstepping and stepping up. And when a child whispers for help, no matter how quiet that whisper is, it takes courage to listen, and even more courage to speak. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay for my boyfriend's mom's birthday dinner after she called me his temporary girlfriend? At some point, you stop asking for respect and start expecting it. The writer, 27 years old, kind, thoughtful, and clearly someone who tries, is in a 1.5-year relationship with a man she genuinely cares about. Things were going well. They'd talked about moving in. She's made an effort with his family, brought gifts, showed up to gatherings with a smile. She's not just tagging along, she's investing. But there's one problem, his mother. From the very beginning, this woman never warmed up. No outright arguments, no screaming matches, just that icy, polite, aggressive way of treating someone like they'll never truly belong. The type of attitude that wraps rudeness in a smile and pretends it's just harmless fun. And then came her birthday dinner, a fancy restaurant, a family affair. Writer shows up ready to be supportive, happy to help with the cost. When her boyfriend mentions they'll split the bill between the kids, Writer doesn't hesitate. She agrees. She's part of this family dynamic now, or so she thought. The night starts off okay. Food, conversation, laughter, until the mother stands up to give a toast. You can always feel it when something's coming. That tension in the air. That moment where everything goes still just before the slap lands. I'm just so happy to be surrounded by family and some of the newer, hopefully fully temporary additions. And she smiles. Directly at Writer. There's that moment where time freezes. Everyone hears it. Everyone knows exactly what it means. And yet, awkward chuckles, stolen glances, the kind of fake laughter that fills the silence when nobody's brave enough to call it out. Ryder turns to her boyfriend. This is your moment. This is where you step in and show me I matter to you. But all he does is give her that look, that pleading expression that says, please don't make a scene. He didn't speak up. He didn't defend her. He let the comment hang there like it was nothing. So Ryder made a choice. A quiet one. She stood up, went to the bathroom, not to cry or scream, but to breathe, to gather herself. And when she returned, she didn't cause a scene. She didn't yell. She didn't throw drinks or flip tables. No. She looked the waiter in the eye and said, split my items to my own bill, please. I'm paying for myself, and that's it. Paid her share, left the table, walked away with her dignity intact, something that was clearly missing at that dinner table. But of course, that was the problem. Later, her boyfriend texted, said she was disrespectful, said she made a scene over a joke, that his mother thinks she's dramatic, unstable even. Let's pause here. A woman gets humiliated in front of an entire family, is expected to pay for the very dinner where she was insulted, and when she draws the mildest possible boundary, she's the villain? Ryder told him the truth. If he's okay with his mother calling her temporary after nearly 2 years together, maybe. She is temporary. And now, silence. No response. Just the echo of that moment still ringing in her ears. So she asks, am I the asshole for refusing to pay for that dinner and for not apologizing for standing up for myself? Let's really think about this. It's not about dinner. It's not even about the insult, as sharp as it was. It's about watching someone you love stay silent when it matters. It's about realizing that being tolerated is not the same thing as being welcomed. And it's about asking yourself how long you're supposed to smile while being treated like a placeholder. Ryder didn't overreact. She reacted like someone who's been swallowing discomfort for far too long, who finally decided that she wasn't going to finance her own disrespect. This wasn't a scene. This was self-respect with a side of boundaries. And frankly, it was long overdue. Am I the asshole for telling my mom I can't make my baby suffer the way she and dad made my brother suffer? There are some choices in life that don't come with a right answer. Only pain and the kind of courage no one ever wants to be forced to find. The writer and her husband, both in their late 20s, had been hoping, praying, waiting for 2 long years. 2 years of tracking cycles, clinging to hope, and picking out names they probably whispered to each other in bed before falling asleep. And finally, the test turned positive. That tiny little heartbeat, their baby. But life, in its most cruel form, doesn't always follow the script. A fatal fetal abnormality. Words that hit like a wrecking ball. A diagnosis that shattered everything they had dreamed of. And it wasn't just theory. It wasn't just numbers on a page. The writer knew exactly what this meant. She lived it. Because when she was a child, her parents had another child, her brother. And the diagnosis was the same kind of horror story. Doctors warned them, told them it would be grim. But her parents, desperate and hopeful, couldn't let go. They carried to term, they fought, they tried to believe in a miracle. But miracles didn't come. What followed was pain. Endless, raw, unjust pain for a baby who never had a chance. Her brother suffered, and everyone around him did too, watching, powerless, while this tiny soul gasped his way through a short, tormented life. And though her parents would eventually come to regret it, that choice left a mark on the entire family, especially on the writer. So now, faced with the same nightmare, the writer made the only choice she felt she could. She wouldn't let her baby suffer. She wouldn't wait for nature to take its course while her child endured the kind of pain no one should ever feel. This wasn't a choice about giving up. It was about love. The kind of love that bleeds. The kind that lets go because holding on would hurt the one you love even more. But not everyone around her saw it that way. Her father, the same man who, back then, had started to question the suffering too late. He understood. He stood by her. No judgment, just quiet, steady support. But her in-laws, full of doubt, saying she should get more opinions, as if 3 specialists agreeing wasn't enough, as if her grief and clarity were somehow not valid until she exhausted every option, every hope, every what if, as if maybe, just maybe, she was wrong about the nightmare she knew all too well. And then there was her mother. The one who had already walked this road. Instead of support, there was resistance. Calls, messages, pressure, pleas to cancel the appointment, to carry to term, to let nature decide. as if nature ever chose gently in these situations. At first, Ryder tried to explain, carefully, gently. She tried to help her mom see the love behind her choice, the strength it takes to let go, but her mother wasn't hearing it. And then came the breaking point. How can you live with yourself if you kill your baby? That was the line, the one that snapped something inside. Because the writer wasn't ending a life in coldness, she was ending suffering before it could begin. She was trying to protect a baby she loved more than she ever thought possible. So she said it. With anger, with pain. I can't make my baby suffer the way you and Dad made my brother suffer. And just like that, the air shifted. Her mother looked like she'd been hit, shocked, hurt. And she said it was cruel, that the writer's pain didn't excuse her words. But here's the thing. Those words weren't meant to wound. They were the truth. A brutal, aching truth that had been buried for too long. The kind of truth that only surfaces when you're standing at the edge of unbearable decisions. The writer didn't want to lash out. She didn't want to throw her mother's past in her face. But the memory of her brother, the image of him suffering, wasn't just some abstract trauma. It was a vow she'd carried ever since. And now she asks, am I the asshole for what I said? For standing firm in my choice? And in the heat of pain, telling my mom the truth about what I saw? Let's be clear. This isn't about blame. This is about legacy, about breaking the cycle, about honoring the short life of her brother by learning from it. Some people think strength means never wavering, but sometimes true strength is in knowing when not to fight. When loving someone means sparing them pain, even if it costs you everything. The writer didn't choose this, but she is choosing compassion. And if there's any justice in the world, that shouldn't make her the villain. Am I the asshole for refusing to repay my ex-husband for the college tuition he paid for years ago? Time has a funny way of circling back, doesn't it? 20 years ago, the writer was in a completely different chapter of life. A young stay-at-home mom, juggling diapers by day and textbooks by night, chasing a dream of becoming a nurse while raising a toddler. And just when things were already stretched thin, her husband stepped out. Not just metaphorically. He left. Walked out of the marriage, out of the life they were building, and into someone else's arms. At the time, he was paying for her nursing school. And in the middle of all the upheaval, the writer asked him, could he please just keep paying for her education? So she could finish what she started. Build a career. Raise their son without falling into debt she couldn't crawl out of. And to his credit, he said yes. Not out of obligation, he claimed, but because it was the least he could do. After all, he was leaving her behind to raise their son alone while he played house with someone new. He even kept paying when his affair partner became pregnant. She wasn't happy about it, called it a waste of money, demanded that it stop. But he held the line, paid for the remaining year and a half left of the writer's degree. Let's pause there for a second, because this wasn't a loan. There was no contract, no IOU, no handshake deal in the shadows. This was a promise made by a man who left and wanted to soften the blow just enough to walk away clean. Fast forward to the present, the writer is now a nurse practitioner. Independent, successful, still single by choice. She never remarried, never leaned on anyone else. She built her life from the ground up with grit and resolve. And now her son, that little boy she raised, is about to be a father himself. She's over the moon. And like any loving parent, she wanted to give something meaningful, a childhood keepsake, a few sentimental items, and a check, a few $1,000s, because diapers, doctor visits, and bassinets don't come cheap. It was a quiet, private gesture. No big show, just love. But then, the past came crashing through the front door. Her ex-husband and his wife showed up unexpectedly, dinner in hand, surprise on their faces. And there, sitting innocently on the counter, was that check. His wife clocked it immediately. And with a tone that cut sharper than a scalpel, she said, well, maybe since you have all this money now, you can finally pay us back for that college tuition. Pay them back? After 20 years? After he walked out? After she spent years in a cramped apartment building a life from scratch while they cozied up in what used to be her home? And let's be honest, that woman never wanted him to pay for the education in the first place. Now she wants to retroactively turn it into a debt? The writer was stunned. Her ex had never mentioned this before, never asked, never even hinted. In fact, he had always said it was the right thing to do. So she asked point blank, "Do you guys need the money or something?" Her ex said no. But his wife? It's about principle. Ah, yes, principle. The ever-convenient shield people love to hide behind when they're looking to stir drama without admitting they're just bitter. And that's when the writer made it clear. No, she would not be paying back anything. She reminded them of the facts, that she was the one scraping by while they lived comfortably, that she was left picking up the pieces, that this woman got the house, the husband, and the life, while the writer had to rebuild from the ground up with nothing but a nursing degree and a toddler. And suddenly, she's the one being selfish. She left, emotions running high. But the storm didn't end there. Apparently, this has been a thing in their household. This woman has brought it up before to their son in front of other people, and now it's ballooned into full-blown family drama. The writer's been getting calls from multiple family members, all echoing the same message. You need to get over yourself. Just pay it back. But pay what back? There was no agreement, no debt, just a decision made decades ago by a man who said, "This is the least I can do." Now the woman he left the writer for wants to rewrite history and turn a gift into a bill. So now the writer asks, am I the asshole for refusing to repay my ex-husband for tuition he willingly paid 20 years ago? Let's call it what it is. This isn't about money. It's about resentment. It's about control. It's about someone watching the writer finally succeed and not being able to stomach it. And honestly, that's not her burden to carry. She raised her son. She did the hard work. She put herself through hell and came out the other side better for it. She doesn't owe anyone a damn thing. And if anything, she's still doing what's right, giving back to her son and his new family. Not out of obligation, but love. And that, right there, that's what real principle looks like. Am I the asshole for refusing to work with my ex and telling him I don't need to ask his permission to do things with our son? Parenting after a breakup isn't easy. It's not supposed to be. It's a minefield of compromise, communication, and, if you're lucky, a little bit of cooperation. But sometimes what starts as co-parenting starts to feel more like control. The writer and her ex share custody of their 11-year-old son. A 60-40 split weighted in the writer's favor because of her ex's job. On paper, that sounds fairly typical, but life isn't lived on paper. Her ex remarried 3 years ago. His new wife came with a 10-year-old daughter, and just like that, the family dynamic changed. A new household, a new sibling, but not one of those fairy tale, instantly bonded, built-in best friend kind of stories. Their son and the stepdaughter, they don't get along. At all. At first, her ex and his wife said they'd let things develop naturally. But when a year passed, and not only was there no progress, but things had gotten colder, more tense, they started forcing it, pushing the kids into shared activities, trying to manufacture a bond where one hadn't formed. Now here's where it gets frustrating. The writer doesn't meddle. She's not hovering over her ex's house with binoculars. When her son is with his dad, that's his time. She respects it. All she expects is the same courtesy in return. So when her son asked to see a movie he was super excited about, writer said yes, took him and 3 of his friends. No drama, just a mom making a memory with her kid. But then her ex found out, and suddenly it wasn't just a movie anymore. It was a betrayal, a disruption of some secret plan she had no clue about. He'd apparently told the kids they were going to see it together for bonding. Ryder was expected to just know this, or worse, ask permission. He scolded her, told her she should have checked in, that she should have known he wanted to use the movie as some magical family healing moment. Let's pause right there. Ask permission to take her son to a movie during her time? This wasn't a scheduling conflict. This wasn't a medical decision. This wasn't even a major co-parenting crossroads. This was popcorn and cinema and an 11-year-old kid getting to enjoy a movie with his friends. And now she's being told she's sabotaging the blended family? But wait, it gets worse. Apparently, their son didn't even want to go to the movie with the stepsister. He'd already told his dad that. So now, The ex is claiming their son manipulated the writer by not telling her they were planning to see it. Let's be real here. That's not manipulation. That's a kid being honest with one parent because he knows the other one might not listen. That's a child trying to enjoy something without being forced into an uncomfortable situation just for the sake of some adult fantasy of a perfect blended family. And yet, her ex is still framing her as the problem, saying she's not working with him, accusing her of secretly wanting their new family dynamic to fall apart. But here's the truth, and this is important. Working together doesn't mean rolling over. It doesn't mean sacrificing your child's joy to preserve someone else's ego. And it sure as hell doesn't mean asking permission every time you want to share a moment with your own son. The writer made a choice. She chose her son's happiness in that moment over some forced photo op for a family that's still trying to glue itself together. She's not undermining anything, she's just refusing to turn parenting into a tug of war. And maybe the hardest pill for her ex to swallow is this: sometimes two kids just don't click. No amount of movie nights or forced bonding is going to change that. And if one of those kids, your own son, is telling you he's uncomfortable, maybe, just maybe, you listen. So now the writer asks, am I the asshole for refusing to work with my ex and for saying I don't need his permission to do things with our son? Absolutely not. She's not being petty. She's being a parent who listens, who respects boundaries, and who understands that love isn't measured by who can control the most moments, but by who protects their child's peace. And in this case, that's exactly what she did. Am I the asshole for embarrassing a guy at a party after he mocked me for carrying Narcan? So picture this: a regular backyard party, music bumping, drinks flowing, that low-stakes, early 20s vibe where everyone's just trying to take a breath from the week. Nothing deep, nothing serious, just good weather and chill company. That was the writer's weekend, just another birthday hangout. She shows up, sets her keys down, nothing unusual, except on her keychain she keeps Narcan. Discreet, compact, life-saving Narcan. Now let's pause here. Not everyone knows this, but Narcan is an opioid overdose reversal medication. It's not flashy, it's not trendy, it's what you carry when you've seen too much to not carry it. And that's exactly where the writer's coming from. She's lost people, she's seen friends collapse. So yeah, she carries Narcan, because preparedness isn't paranoia, it's compassion. But then, here comes Brad. Brad, the guy at every party who thinks he's the main character in a sitcom nobody asked to watch. He picks up the writer's keys, spots the Narcan case, and instead of asking with genuine curiosity, he goes full clown mode. Loud. Mocking. Is this Narcan? What are you expecting someone to overdose during Flip Cup? Like he was auditioning for a roast battle he wasn't invited to. The writer tries to keep it light, gives him a calm, direct answer. Yeah, ODs can happen anywhere. I'd rather be ready. But Brad doesn't stop. He laughs in her face, calls her extra, accuses her of virtue signaling. Now, if you've ever been in a moment where someone tries to reduce your real-life, hard-earned empathy to a punchline, you know how deep that sting goes. You know how violating it feels when someone takes something that came from pain, from experience, and twists it into performative nonsense. She tries again, explains that it's like carrying an EpiPen, something you hope you never use, but you carry it anyway. She even shares that she used Narcan on a stranger outside a Panera not long ago. And what does Brad say? You sound like you want something dramatic to happen so you can be the hero. It's giving white savior complex. Let that sink in. This man took her quiet act of responsibility, something born from tragedy, and turned it into a character assassination. All for a laugh. All for the sake of being that guy at the party. And finally, the writer snaps. Now she didn't give a TED talk, she didn't throw a drink, she didn't yell. But what she did do was deliver a surgical takedown. I don't need to be the hero. I just don't want to be you, standing there with your hands in your pockets and mouth running while someone dies in front of you. Just useless, which Tibaha kind of seems like your default. You act like having nothing to offer is some kind of personality trait. Silence. The whole party locked in, and she finishes it with one of the coldest closers ever. Sorry, that's only for big boys. Mic dropped. But here's the kicker, after all that, she starts getting texts. Not "Are you okay?" Not "That was brave." But "You embarrassed Brad. You killed the vibe. You shouldn't bring drugs to a party." Let's stop right there. Narcan isn't a party drug. It's the seatbelt of modern life. Nobody wants to need it, but when it's needed, it can be the difference between someone going home or not going home ever again. Brad's the one who made it uncomfortable. Brad's the one who dragged a life-saving tool into the spotlight for the sake of ridicule. The writer didn't bring drama to the party. She brought accountability. And in a world where people are dying from preventable overdoses every single day, maybe carrying Narcan shouldn't be mocked. It should be normalized. So, is the writer the asshole for embarrassing Brad? Let's be real. She didn't embarrass him. He embarrassed himself. He just didn't expect someone to clap back with facts, confidence, and zero patience for nonsense. She defended herself. She stood up for the people who don't always make it home. She made sure someone like Brad doesn't walk away thinking that kind of mockery is acceptable. And that's not drama. That's character. Am I the asshole for demanding money back after a friend threw away most of my kitchen utensils? So, let's set the scene. The writer and her husband have just welcomed a beautiful baby girl, a moment that's supposed to be full of warmth, bonding, and peace. And like many new parents, they decided to take a little time away, 2 precious months in the writer's home country, a chance for her own mother to finally meet the baby she missed during the chaos of the pandemic. It wasn't just a visit, it was something deeply personal. Healing, family, and life for a moment aligned perfectly. A couple they know, Sarah and her partner, needed a place to stay. The writer's apartment would be empty. They'd cover the rent, watch over the home, even take care of the car. On paper, it was perfect, a rare win-win. But when the writer returned, her kitchen was nearly empty. Not messy, not disorganized, gone. Utensils missing, baking tools disappeared, pans vanished. Even the special cookware that her mother brought from her home country, irreplaceable items tied to culture, to memory, just gone. Let that settle for a second. Imagine stepping back into your kitchen and finding not just tools, but traditions, memories, wiped out without a word. No call, no message, just silence and missing drawers. The writer was understandably furious, confused, shocked. And to make things worse, all Sarah could offer was some half-hearted excuse that she only threw out what she couldn't clean enough. What does that even mean? Who makes that decision? In someone else's home? This wasn't junk. This wasn't a pile of moldy dishes left to rot. These were functional, meaningful, personal kitchen items. Anyone who cooks, even just a little, knows a kitchen isn't just a place to eat. It's a space built over years. You collect tools slowly, you season pans with time, you inherit baking trays from family. You don't just toss them out like old flyers. And yet, here was Sarah, standing in the ashes of someone else's kitchen, acting like she had done a favor. To top it off, the writer's husband, minimizing everything, asking her to let it go, telling her not to rock the boat. Because, of course, this is a long-time friendship. But here's the thing. At what cost? When someone violates your space, your trust, your memories, and the response is, "Please don't cause waves," you start to wonder who's actually protecting you, who's standing up for you, and who's just keeping the peace to avoid the discomfort of accountability. The writer asked for one thing: replace what you destroyed. That's not petty. That's not vengeful. That's basic respect. She didn't ask for emotional reparations. She asked for cookware. And even that was met with resistance. And now she's left questioning herself. Was I too harsh? Am I making this bigger than it is? Am I being gaslit into silence? Let's be real. You don't just walk into someone's house, treat their belongings like garbage, and expect to be thanked for the cleanup. And you definitely don't get to decide unilaterally what is or isn't worth saving when it isn't yours to begin with. The most infuriating part? That creeping feeling that no one sees it the way she does, that maybe she's making a fuss, that maybe the emotional weight she feels isn't valid. But here's what matters. This wasn't about spatulas. It was about respect. So, is the writer the asshole for demanding her things back, or at the very least, reimbursement? No. She's someone who trusted a friend, and that friend repaid her by treating her home like it was a donation bin. And now, instead of an apology, she's being told to swallow it down for the sake of someone else's comfort. That's not keeping the peace. That's erasing the damage. Am I the asshole for yelling at my aunt after she kept pressuring me to marry her son? The writer is a 24-year-old woman from Pakistan, a country where cousin marriages aren't just common, they're often expected. And for most of her life, this expectation has been quietly, persistently, and uncomfortably placed on her shoulders by one very determined woman, her aunt. It started with those jokes. You know the ones. You'd make a good daughter-in-law. You and my son would make a good couple. The kind of comments that sound harmless on the surface, but over time, they weigh you down. And the writer, still a teenager at the time, did what so many people do when faced with uncomfortable family pressure. She stayed quiet. She laughed it off. She hoped maybe if she ignored it long enough, it would stop, but it didn't. It only got worse. Every family visit, every gathering, the aunt doubled down, repeating it like it was a foregone conclusion. And despite the writer clearly, repeatedly saying she wasn't interested, it never mattered. Imagine telling someone no for years and being ignored like your voice was nothing more than background noise. And it wasn't just words. Her cousin, her own cousin, started messaging her privately, saying things like, "We're getting married in the future, so why aren't you talking to me now?" That's not just awkward, that's invasive. Entitled, like her silence and discomfort were just part of some little game. And still, through it all, the writer kept trying to be polite, respectful. She didn't want to cause waves. Her mother, caught in the middle, also told her to stay quiet, promising it would never actually happen. But promises like that, they don't shield you from the mental toll. Then, one day at a family gathering, her aunt crossed the line. "Again, you're all grown up now. When are you going to marry him? Our decision is final." Not your decision, not your life. Ours. And just like that, the years of being dismissed, silenced, and pressured exploded into one very public, very justified outburst. The writer snapped. She yelled. She swore. She finally said all the things she had held in for so long. And you know what? Sometimes silence is not strength. Sometimes speaking up, even if it's messy, is the only way to be heard. Her brother had to carry her out of that house. And outside, overwhelmed and raw, she broke down. But the aftermath? That's where the guilt really set in. Her mom was devastated. Not angry, just hurt. She hadn't wanted to upset the family. She'd tried to protect her daughter quietly behind the scenes, but now she was being blamed, shamed, cut off by her siblings, painted as the villain in a story where all she ever did was try to keep the peace. The aunt? She somehow blamed the writer and her mom for her son's later divorce, as if they were responsible for everything that unraveled, when all they ever did was say no to a forced union. And now, the writer sits with this weight. She wonders, could I have handled it better? Was it worth the pain my mom went through? Should I have stayed quiet just one more time? But here's the truth. Sometimes, no matter how you say it, no will never be heard unless it's loud. And if someone ignores your voice over and over, they don't get to cry victim when you finally scream. The writer isn't the asshole. She's someone who was put in an impossible position, torn between her own autonomy and her mother's suffering. She tried silence, she tried politeness, she tried boundaries, and when all of that failed, she did what she had to do to be free. The real shame isn't how she reacted, it's that it took so long to be taken seriously. Am I the asshole for leaving my husband after I found out the girl he claimed was his cousin is actually his daughter? The writer was married to this man for 10 years, a full decade of love, trust, or what she thought was trust. 10 years of sharing a life, a home, and a future, built on something she didn't even know was a lie until it smacked her in the face. It started with a story, a tragic one. Her husband spoke of a beloved uncle, someone who had helped him through dark times, someone he wanted to honor. That uncle, he said, had died alongside his wife, leaving behind a helpless child. He asked the writer to help bring that girl to the US, to give her a better life. She agreed with all the compassion and warmth of someone who believed she was doing something good, something kind. Together, they paid for the girl's move, helped her adjust, and welcomed her into their family. And for years, the lie lived with them. The girl called him uncle. She called the writer auntie. They had meals together, celebrated holidays, built memories. The writer even started to see her as a daughter of her own. And her husband stood by quietly every single day, knowing the truth. Now here's where it all shatters. The writer got sick. Just a regular day, just a simple moment, until it wasn't. While the girl was out picking up medication, her phone rang. Again and again. The writer picked it up, thinking it might be important, and in that moment, everything unraveled. A woman on the other end. Angry. Desperate. She asked for her daughter. She said the writer's husband was the father. And then, to top it off, she threatened to call the police if he didn't let her see her child. The silence in the room must have felt like it could swallow her whole. And here's the part that really cuts deep. The truth didn't come from the man she married. It came from a stranger. It came by accident. And then, only then, did the girl confirm what should have been said from the beginning. The girl was never his niece. She was his daughter. His daughter. Think about that. This man didn't just lie once, he lied for years. He watched the writer take on a maternal role in this girl's life and never gave her the truth. He made choices for her. He decided she didn't need to know. He decided her consent, her agency, didn't matter. And when the confrontation finally came, he played the fear card. I thought you'd leave me. But isn't that the point? The writer deserved to know what she was stepping into. That choice should have been hers. Instead, it was stolen. She wasn't just betrayed, she was manipulated. So she did what many wouldn't have the courage to do. She walked away. She packed her things and left the home they built together. Because sometimes the biggest betrayal isn't in the act. It's in the years you were denied the truth. It's in being treated like you couldn't handle honesty. But now, the guilt campaign begins. His family has entered the ring, calling her heartless, saying she's the one tearing the family apart, that he did it for love, that she was cruel for abandoning a girl who saw her as a mother figure. But let's pause for a second. Who really did the abandoning here? The writer didn't abandon that girl. The husband abandoned his marriage the day he decided to build it on a lie. He's the one who manipulated everyone, who robbed both the writer and his daughter of honesty, who thought deception would be easier than trust. And that's the most tragic part of this story. Not the lie, not the fallout, but the fact that it never had to be this way. If he had been honest, truly honest, maybe the writer would have chosen to stay, to support, to be a part of his child's life. But now, she'll never know, because he never gave her the chance. So is the writer the asshole for leaving? Absolutely not. She's a woman who loved, who gave, who sacrificed. And when she found out her entire foundation was built on a lie, she walked away with her dignity intact. That's not cruelty. That's survival. Am I the asshole for wanting to get an abortion despite my boyfriend wanting me to keep it and have his baby? The writer is 20 years old. She's in her final year of community college, barely scraping by on part-time wages and student loans, juggling school, work, and the kind of stress most people wouldn't wish on anyone. She's just starting to build a future. Her future. Then Friday happened. She found out she was pregnant, unplanned, unexpected, unwelcome. And this isn't just a scare or a maybe. It's real, and it's happening right in the middle of her already chaotic life. A life where rent barely gets paid, where the food bank is sometimes the only way to eat, where a college degree still feels like a distant finish line. Now imagine processing all of that, alone. She didn't tell her boyfriend right away. Not out of spite, not out of selfishness, but because she needed a moment to breathe, to think, to exist in this massive, overwhelming reality without someone else's voice trying to control it. And when she finally told him, he didn't listen. He lectured. His first reaction wasn't concern. It wasn't compassion. It was about him. He was angry she didn't tell him the second the test turned positive. He said she kept a secret. He said she needed to make the right choice for their baby. Not once did he stop to ask, what does she need right now? They've only been dating 3 months. 3. He's almost 30. She's still figuring out how to survive the semester. He's never met her parents. She's only met his mom once. But suddenly, he feels entitled to dictate her body, her future, her every move. The writer made her stance clear. She's not ready to be a mother. Emotionally, physically, financially, she's not in a place to raise a child. And here's the key thing. She knows that about herself. That's self-awareness. That's not weakness. That's strength. But when she said she was planning to travel out of state for an abortion because her home state has all but banned it, he lost it. He got angry. He said she was ending a life. And he threatened her, said if she went through with it, they were done. Honestly, that might be the only silver lining in this whole mess, because then things got ugly. He threw a bottle at her. He stormed out. He called her a murderer behind her back. He texted her roommate, blasting her private situation like it was gossip to be passed around. Suddenly, the home she shares with others isn't even safe anymore. Her roommates aren't supportive. One's mad at her for the drama. The other wants nothing to do with her at all. And now she's isolated. No partner, no roommates on her side, and certainly no family to lean on because her parents are conservative, deeply religious, and would likely turn their backs if they found out. So here she is, 20 years old, alone, trying to gather enough money, strength, and courage to travel across state lines for a basic medical procedure. She doesn't have a car. She's trying to line up time off work. She's got an appointment scheduled, but the logistics, the cost, the fear, it's all crashing down. And through it all, she still holds on to clarity. She says, I do not want to have a child. Not at 20, not now. She wants to finish her degree. She wants a life that isn't dictated by someone else's ultimatum. And really, is that so wrong? Now let's talk about the aftermath. She's been called a killer, a whore. Strangers are flooding her inbox with hate, and even worse, with the gall to ask for nudes in the same breath they preach about morality. People she's never met are offering to adopt the clump of cells they think is a baby, while she's just trying to keep food on her table and a roof over her head. This is what happens when control, judgment, and shame take priority over empathy. And yet the writer stays focused. She says she's keeping her appointment. She's working on getting the funds together for travel, a hotel, gas, and the abortion itself. Not because it's easy, but because it's what's right for her. So is the writer the asshole for choosing her future over a pregnancy she didn't plan, didn't want, and can't afford? Absolutely not. What she's doing takes guts, and let's be real, this is the kind of bravery people don't talk about enough. Not the big, loud kind, but the quiet, heavy, terrifying kind that comes from making the hardest choice alone and standing by it anyway. Am I the asshole for wanting a prenup before marriage? At 31 years old, the writer is standing at the edge of something beautiful, engaged to the woman he loves, making plans for a future they've both dreamed about. Everything's been light, joyful, a relationship in bloom. But one conversation, just one, sent a chill through all that warmth. The writer runs his own business. He's worked hard, built something of his own, carved out a sense of stability most people spend years chasing. He owns his home. He's saved diligently. His life is not extravagant, but it's grounded, secure, earned. His fiancée, 28, is doing okay herself. She might not have the same financial cushion, Mike, but that's never been a point of judgment or imbalance in their relationship. The writer isn't waving his assets like some power move. He's just trying to be smart. So he brings up a prenup. Not to accuse, not to insult, but to protect. Both of them. In his eyes, it's not about expecting the worst. It's about being prepared in a world where things can go wrong, where love doesn't always guarantee smooth sailing, where two people with the best intentions can still drift apart. And here's where it gets heavy. She didn't take it well. Her reaction wasn't anger, but disappointment. That quiet, painful kind of hurt that lingers. She said it made her feel like the writer was already planning for failure, that the idea of a prenup killed the magic, stripped the romance, took what was meant to be about forever and brought it crashing down into what-ifs. And just like that, the air between them changed. No blow-up fight, no yelling, but something shifted. A distance crept in. That easy laughter they used to share, a little more muted now. The late-night talks, shorter, heavier. The writer can feel her pulling back, and he's left sitting with this ache in his chest, wondering, did I screw this up by being too logical, too cautious? But here's the thing. Isn't it possible to love someone and want to protect what you've built? Isn't it responsible to talk about the hard stuff before it becomes a legal battle in a courtroom? The writer wasn't coming from a place of fear. He was coming from a place of experience, of realism. Not cold-heartedness, but clarity. He even told her, if the roles were reversed, I'd want you to protect what's yours too. That's not distrust, that's equality. And yet, now he's second-guessing. Wondering if the very thing he thought was reasonable is now casting a shadow over the life he hoped to build with her. This is where so many couples fall silent, right at the fork in the road between emotion and practicality. But if a relationship can't weather this conversation, what does that say about its foundation? Because love is about trust, yes, but it's also about communication, boundaries, respect. And if that love is strong, a prenup shouldn't be a threat. It should be just another part of protecting the future you're trying to create together. So, is the writer the asshole for bringing up a prenup? Absolutely not. He's not trying to plan for a breakup. He's trying to plan ahead with eyes wide open. And honestly, that takes guts. Not just because it's awkward, but because he knew it might upset her and still chose to be honest. This isn't about money. It's about maturity. Am I the asshole for laughing at my ex and his new wife in life when they suggested changing my son's school? Let's talk about Tyler. 10 years old, smart, bright-eyed, growing up in a world where stability means everything. And then there's the writer, his mom, a single parent by choice, focused, responsible, fiercely protective, someone who's chosen to pause her own life's next chapter, not out of bitterness, but out of dedication. She made a vow to herself. No more serious relationships until her son is off to college. This is his time. And the writer, she's doing it all. A successful banker, providing not just food and shelter, but a good life. Tyler goes to a top-tier private school, an expensive one, yes, but one she can afford. She's not looking for praise. She's just doing what a parent should do when they have the means, giving her kid the best possible shot at the future. And here comes the twist. Her ex, the father of her child, recently remarried. A woman named Lila who brought 2 kids of her own into the picture. One the same age as Tyler, the other a couple years younger. Blended families aren't easy. They take time, patience, and a lot of emotional work. But instead of navigating that transition gently, Tyler was thrown into a new reality where everything, from dinners to activities to attention, became shared. No more one-to-one time with dad. Suddenly he was just another kid in a group. And worse, he was now expected to accept a new mother figure who tried to parent him like they had history. Spoiler, they don't. Now here's where the story takes a turn from strained to absurd. The writer is invited to dinner by her ex and Lila, what seems like an olive branch, civil, adult, maybe even hopeful. But after dinner, they send the kids to another room and drop this on her. They want Tyler pulled out of his school, not because it's not a good school, not because he's struggling, but because their kids can't go there. They say it's about equality, that it'll be better if all the kids attend the same public school. That being in the same class will strengthen the bond between Tyler and his new step-sibling. Let's pause right there. What they're really saying is, we can't afford the same life you've worked hard to provide, so we want you to lower your son's standard to match ours. And honestly, the writer laughed, not out of cruelty, but because the audacity was almost cartoonish. She laid it out plainly. Your financial problems are not my problem. And she's right. Let's be real. Why should Tyler have to shrink himself, delay his future, lose his educational advantage just to make someone else feel more comfortable? But it didn't end there. The ex and his new wife doubled down. They threw in lines about family unity, accused the writer of trying to break their household apart, blamed her for Tyler not connecting with the other kids, claimed she was making it impossible for their blended family to thrive. And here's where the emotional punch hits. They're not just asking for a school change. They're asking Tyler to sacrifice his individuality to make them feel like one happy family. That's not unity, that's control. The writer held firm, took her son, left. Now the ex and Lila are spreading blame like wildfire, saying the writer is the reason Tyler's distant, that she's turning him against them, that she's an obstacle to their picture-perfect family dream. But here's what they don't see. The writer is not against their family. She's just not willing to fold her son into someone else's mold for convenience. She doesn't trash talk the stepkids. She doesn't involve Tyler in adult drama. But she's not going to force a fake bond or compromise her son's opportunities just to make others feel better. And then, the final blow. Lila says, for Tyler, I'm not going to deny my kids a father. To which the writer responded, rightfully so, that Lila is no less than a step monster. Not because she's a stepmom, but because she's prioritizing the appearance of family over what her husband's son actually needs. And the entitlement doesn't stop there. They're upset Tyler has nicer clothes, that he has branded shoes and things their kids don't, that his grandparents spoil him, that he's thriving in a way their children aren't. And the writer? She makes no apologies. She won't dim her child's life because someone else's financial situation is different. That's not how fairness works. It's not her job to parent 3 kids. It's her job to raise Tyler. And if that makes her the villain in their eyes, so be it. Because here's the truth. This isn't about equality. It's about control. And the writer refused to play along. So, is the writer the asshole for laughing? Absolutely not. She wasn't laughing at children. She was laughing at the absurdity of 2 grown adults thinking they could dictate her son's future because it made them feel more comfortable. She's not cold. She's not cruel. She's a mother who knows the value of what she's built, and she's not going to let guilt or manipulation tear it down. Let's call it what it is. She's choosing what's right for her son. And sometimes that means saying no, unapologetically. Am I the asshole for telling my husband he isn't allowed to come to our baby's appointments anymore after he told the doctor something untrue? A first-time mom, new to this whole parenting thing, still figuring out how to juggle sleepless nights, endless feeding sessions, and the quiet panic that never quite leaves your chest when you're responsible for something so small and so breakable. She's married. Still early in that new season of life where the titles of husband and wife haven't fully settled in yet, where you're learning how to be a team. But in this moment, they don't feel like much of a team at all. Their baby girl is only 3 months old, still so tiny, still in that fragile, beautiful stage where every breath feels sacred. And like many new parents, the writer's life revolves around this child, her sleep, her cries, her heartbeat, especially the nighttime hours, when everything is quiet and the weight of it all starts to sink in. One night, around midnight, the baby starts crying. Nothing unusual. She's actually been sleeping pretty well lately. Just 1 late night feed and back to sleep until morning. So the writer scoops her up, climbs back into bed, and starts nursing her, sitting upright, the TV softly glowing in the background. The world is still. The baby falls asleep on her chest. And in that moment, the kind of moment moms talk about, but no one ever truly understands unless they've lived it, the writer just sits there. Not because she has to. Not because she's tired, but because this is one of those moments you don't rush. The quiet, the closeness, the way your baby melts into your skin like she still belongs to you in every way. Then, snap. Her husband jolts awake, and not with concern, not with a gentle whisper, but full-blown screaming. In a flash, he's in her face, waking the baby with his yelling, accusing the writer, his wife, the mother of his child, of falling asleep with the baby on her chest. He swears he saw her eyes shut. The writer insists she wasn't asleep. She remembers it all, the show on TV, the warmth of the baby, the way she was just being still. But he won't hear it. He keeps pressing, arguing, repeating that he knows what he saw. And here's the thing. This isn't about a mistake. This is about trust. Because instead of asking, instead of checking in, he came out the gate, swinging with accusations. And when it comes to parenting, especially in the raw early months, that kind of thing cuts deep. But it didn't stop there. Fast forward to their daughter's next pediatric appointment. This should have been a routine check-in, a chance to make sure baby is healthy, growing, doing all the right things. Instead, her husband chooses another doctor to drop a bomb. She co-sleeps with the baby. He says it casually, almost like he's tattling, like she's been caught. The writer is floored. She doesn't co-sleep. They specifically agreed not to. She never claimed to be a perfect mom, but she is a careful one, a responsible one. And now, in front of a professional, she's being painted as careless. Even worse, the doctor believes him. She gets the lecture, the judgmental side eyes, the unspoken assumption that she's endangering her child, all based on something that never happened. Her husband walks it back a little, saying it only happens sometimes. But even that's a lie. It didn't happen at all. He took one moment, one peaceful moment of her holding her baby, and turned it into something ugly, something unsafe, something untrue. When they get home, she doesn't explode, she doesn't scream back, she just tells him the truth. You made me look like a bad mom, you made me feel like I was failing, and I don't want you at her appointments anymore. He blows up, says she can't stop him. And legally, she knows that's true. But emotionally, trust is cracked. The damage is done. Because this wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a betrayal. And in the delicate, exhausting early months of motherhood, that betrayal hits differently. So is the writer the asshole for telling her husband not to come to the appointments anymore? Honestly, no. She's a new mom trying her best. And when you're in that fog of new parenthood, you need support, not sabotage. You need someone to back you up, not throw you under the bus in front of a pediatrician. This isn't about ego. It's about safety, trust, and respect. And the writer deserves all three. Am I the asshole for telling a property manager her tenant's death is on her hands? This story comes from the writer, an EMT working in the chaos of city life, where the line between life and death is razor thin. It's a job where seconds matter, hesitation kills, and bureaucracy, well, sometimes it's the biggest obstacle in the room. Last week, the writer's unit was dispatched to what's called an unknown medical. Never a good sign. Someone had been on the phone with family saying they didn't feel well. Then, a thud. Silence. That kind of sudden drop in communication, it hits like a gut punch. Everyone knew what that probably meant. The location wasn't far, less than a mile. In under 5 minutes, the writer and their team arrived at the apartment complex, with the fire department right behind. They get to the door, start knocking, calling out, trying every handle and window. Nothing. Everything's locked tight. No signs of movement, no voice calling for help. So the fire captain calls the family, asks if there's a hidden key, anything to get inside. The family tells them there is a spare. The office should have it. That should have been the solution, right? Easy, but no. It was the beginning of the problem. One of the firefighters heads to the office, explains the situation, comes back with a simple message. The manager wants to speak to whoever's in charge. And what does she say? She refuses to hand over the key. She says she can't give access without the tenant's permission. Even after the fire captain explains the obvious, the tenant can't give permission because they're likely unconscious or worse. He tells her plainly, there is a medical emergency. Every second counts, but she holds the line. Not out of cruelty, out of fear. She doesn't want to be held liable if there turns out to be no emergency. Pause here. Imagine being in that moment. You're trained to act fast. You're looking at a locked door with someone potentially dying behind it, and a person in front of you is essentially saying, I need more proof before I let you save them. The fire captain gives her one last warning. Either hand over the key, or they're breaking the door down. Still, she refuses. Now here's where red tape tightens its grip. Due to protocol, the fire department can't force entry unless the sheriff's office is on scene, unless there's someone visibly in distress or calling out. None of that applied here, so they had to wait and wait. 15 minutes. 15 long, agonizing minutes before the sheriffs arrived, and as soon as they did, the door came down in 10 seconds. That's all it took. Inside, they found the man on the floor, unresponsive, barely clinging to any rhythm. The heart was failing fast. CPR began immediately. The writer sprinted for equipment, grabbing gear, jumping into action, hoping for a miracle. But that miracle never came. They worked on the man for over an hour, did everything they could, pushed every drug, compressed every beat, but eventually, they had to call it time of death. And as the writer stepped outside to grab a sheet to offer the patient what little dignity remained, they passed the manager. She asked, "Is everything okay?" And something in the writer snapped. They looked her in the eye and said it. No, everything is not okay. Not long after, the manager, who had overheard the writer telling a sheriff that she stalled them for 20 minutes and now someone was dead, let out a gasp and started crying, retreating to her office. Word got back to the writer's supervisor. They were told to apologize, to take it back, or be written up. But the writer stood firm, and now they're asking, am I the asshole? Here's the truth. In that moment, no one was operating from pure malice. The property manager was scared of being liable, scared of crossing a line. But fear doesn't stop time. Fear doesn't keep a heart beating. And this wasn't a policy discussion. This wasn't about who technically owns a key. This was about a dying man on the other side of a locked door. The writer didn't yell at her, didn't curse, didn't berate her. They simply said the truth, raw and unfiltered. He's gone, and you delayed help. Was it harsh? Yeah, it was, but sometimes the truth is harsh. So, was the writer out of line? Were they heartless, cruel, unprofessional? Or were they human? Because sometimes the weight of watching someone die when you know they might have been saved, if people just acted faster, that weight demands to be spoken, even if it hurts. No, the writer is not the asshole. There's someone who saw death knock and got stuck behind a policy manual. Someone who swore to save lives and was forced to wait while a door stayed locked. And when it was all over, all they had left was the truth. A hard one, but a truth nonetheless. Am I the asshole for skipping my sister's destination wedding because I can't justify the cost? This story's coming from the writer. Someone caught in that very familiar space between family loyalty and financial survival. And the line between the two? It's thinner than most people realize. The writer's sister is planning a wedding, but not just any wedding, a destination wedding, and not just any destination wedding, a high-end, luxury resort, champagne tower, Instagram-perfect kind of affair. Now, the writer loves their sister. Let's be clear about that. This isn't a sibling rivalry situation or a passive-aggressive feud. It's someone trying to be present for a family milestone, but looking at the numbers and realizing they just don't add up. The cost of this whole thing, between flights, hotel stays, fancy clothes, gifts, and whatever other surprise expenses always pop up when you travel, it's more than the writer can swing. Way more. It's not even a question of being cheap. It's a question of being responsible. So the writer sits their sister down and explains, I want to be there, but I just can't afford it. And how does the sister respond? She tells the writer to find a way. Not, I understand. Not, we'll miss you, but I get it. No, just figure it out. Because in her words, this is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, and families should make sacrifices. And here's where things get complicated. The writer recently came into a little bit of money. Not lottery money, not house down payment money. Just enough to maybe buy a ticket, cover a few nights, and show up. So technically, yeah, they could go. But that money, that little windfall, it's the kind of thing that disappears fast if you're not careful. The writer had planned to use it wisely, paying down debt, building an emergency fund, trying to create a tiny bit of breathing room in a life that probably hasn't had much of it, and instead, they're being told to drop it all on a weekend. Let's pause here, because this isn't really about the money, is it? It's about what we expect of each other when emotions are high. It's about how some people measure love through presence, while others measure it through sacrifice. And when those two definitions don't line up, it gets messy. The writer tried to stay supportive. They weren't rude. They didn't shame their sister for her choices. They just said, I can't do it. And now, the sister's calling them selfish, saying they're letting her down. But is it selfish to choose financial stability over a party, even one as big as a wedding? Here's the thing most people forget. A wedding is one day. Debt, that sticks around. An emergency fund, that saves you from ruin. The writer isn't being cold or careless. They're just choosing the long term over the emotional now. And yeah, that choice is hard. It comes with guilt, it comes with family tension, but it's a choice made from care, not indifference. And let's be real for a moment. If you have to pressure someone to spend money they don't have just to prove their love for you, that's not love. That's ego. So, is the writer the villain here? Absolutely not. They're a sibling doing their best to be both supportive and smart. And in a world where financial stress is swallowing people whole, that's not selfish, that's survival. No, the writer is not the asshole. There's someone choosing long-term peace over short-term appearances. Someone who knows that love isn't proven by plane tickets or hotel receipts. Someone who's drawing a line, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. And honestly, that's a kind of love too. Am I the asshole for hanging up on my ex after she told me she cheated and got pregnant? The writer is 20. A college student out of state, trying to balance young adulthood with the fragile hope that a long-distance relationship might survive the miles. It's one of those high school sweethearts trying to make it work situations, the kind where you root for them even when the odds are stacked. The writer and his ex, now 19, had been together since high school. When college pulled them in different directions, they made a choice to stay together. Not everyone would have taken that leap, but they did. And it wasn't perfect, what long distance ever is, but the writer believed in it. He thought they were still solid, still a unit. They hadn't seen each other since summer. Communication had thinned out a bit, sure, but nothing had been said. No warning signs, no confessions, no hey, we need to talk. Just silence wrapped in the assumption that everything was still okay. Until last week. That's when the phone rang and the entire reality the writer had been living in got flipped on its head. She tells him she's pregnant. First reaction? Shock. Second reaction? Confusion. But the writer already knows it's not his. They haven't seen each other in months, so without needing a paternity test, without even having to ask, he knows. He asks anyway. She confirms it, not yours. Then she follows it up with the kind of excuse that hits like a slap in the face. She says it happened during spring break, blamed it on hormones, blamed it on being lonely, as if that somehow makes it easier to swallow, as if those words soften the blow. And then, she tells the writer she still loves him, that she wants to talk things out, as if there's anything left to sort through. The writer, blindsided and betrayed, tells her he doesn't want to talk. He tells her it's over, then hangs up. Not a dramatic goodbye, not a long-winded argument, just a line drawn in a moment of pain and clarity. And afterward, she starts messaging his friends, reaching out, trying to get them to convince him to give her more time, more chances, maybe even just another conversation. But the writer, he hasn't responded. He's stayed silent. And now he's asking himself, am I the asshole for cutting her off? For not giving her more space to explain? Here's the thing, cheating is betrayal. But adding a pregnancy to the mix, that adds a level of permanence to the betrayal. It's not just infidelity, it's future altering, a life-changing consequence from a decision made without the writer's knowledge or respect. And look, maybe people make mistakes. Maybe she is confused. Maybe there's pain on both sides. But the moment she crossed that line, and especially the moment she lied by omission and continued the relationship while carrying that secret, something broke. The writer didn't owe her a therapy session. He didn't owe her emotional labor after she already dropped the emotional equivalent of a bomb in his lap. He set a boundary. And honestly, after that kind of betrayal, that boundary wasn't just valid, it was necessary. Sometimes closure doesn't come through a long conversation. Sometimes it comes through a single quiet decision to walk away. No, the writer is not the asshole. He's not cold. He's not heartless. He's someone who had his world flipped upside down and chose peace over drama. He didn't scream. He didn't retaliate. He simply ended it. And honestly, that's more grace than a lot of people would have given. Am I the asshole for leaving the kids with their cheating father? The writer is 33, a mother, a woman who built her life up again after a past relationship, found strength in routine, stability in her job, and release in her passion. The gym. She already had 2 children from a previous relationship, and after 5 long years, she allowed someone new into her life. Someone who, at first, felt like the perfect man, until he wasn't. At just 8 weeks into a surprise twin pregnancy, the writer found out the truth. He cheated. That fantasy of building a life together shattered. And let's be honest, when you're pregnant, emotions are already riding high. But add betrayal to that, It cuts deeper than bone. The writer was ready to walk, not just from the relationship, but from the pregnancy. She made it clear she'd get an abortion. And honestly, who could blame her? She's staring down the barrel of raising 4 kids alone for a man who couldn't even stay faithful during one of the most vulnerable moments of her life. But he begged. Oh, he begged. He promised change. He swore he'd do better. He pleaded with her not to go through with the abortion. And despite everything she felt, anger, grief, betrayal, she gave him one last shot. One condition, one lifeline. If you cheat again, you raise the twins. You become the main caretaker. I will help, but I'm not sacrificing my body, my mental health, and my stability for a man who won't respect me. And honestly, that's not cruel. That's not selfish. That's someone trying to survive a storm without drowning. Let's be real. A twin pregnancy isn't just double the joy. It's high risk. It's often traumatic. It changes you. Physically, mentally, emotionally. You don't just bounce back, especially not when you already have 2 kids and a life you've worked hard to protect. And yet, in the comments, some people paint the writer as cold, as if deciding to set boundaries makes her a villain. She made it clear this wasn't about collecting kids or baby daddies. She was on birth control. She was excited at first. She believed in him. She wanted this until he broke it. Now, that excitement is gone. The connection to the pregnancy cut off. And as much as she tried to convince herself that maybe, just maybe, giving him another chance was the right thing, deep down, she knew. She's not attached. She's not in love. She's not in this anymore. So she made the call, the final one. She scheduled the abortion. Because while people like to throw opinions from the sidelines, the truth is, they don't have to live in the aftermath. She does. Is the writer the asshole for saying, you cheated, you raised them? Absolutely not. She didn't abandon anything. She was forced to make an impossible choice in the face of betrayal, and she chose survival, self-preservation, peace. She chose to protect her already existing kids, her body, and her mental well-being. People love to romanticize motherhood, to say just forgive or sacrifice more, but they forget that moms are human first. No, the writer is not the asshole. She's someone who got dealt a cruel hand and decided not to keep playing a losing game. And sometimes that's the strongest move you can make.